Let's take a look at Autodesk Infrastructure Modeler and how to create a new model from scratch. So the first thing we're going to do is actually create a new physical model. I'm going to browse to the data storage area where I'm going to keep all this information, and I'm going to keep it under model. Now I've got all my various orthophotography files in here, my terrain data, and I've created a directory called SQL. And it's going to build the SQLite files in here, so I'm just going to simply hit select folder. This time I'm going to give it the model name, so I'm going to call it model. And again, we can put a description in here. I'm going to say sample model for YouTube. Okay, on that, I'm not going to define the model extent at this stage. I'm going to simply hit OK and let it build the actual SQL files in the background. So that's the model built and coming in. And as we know, Infrastructure Modeler is a very powerful design tool that brings in CAD and GIS data and also shares this design intent to your actual stakeholders. So we have a sky in the background, so one of the first things we want to do is go to the Home tab and actually bring in some of our data sources. There's powerful data sources you can get from the likes of Ordnance Survey GB, Ordnance Survey Northern Ireland, or Ordnance Survey Ireland, or there's actually lots of free data sources on the web you can actually get. So I'm going to simply hit on data sources. We're going to have a look at importing some. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say let's connect to raster. Now if we were importing terrain data, an ASC file is a good format to bring it in. So you can see if I can go to raster in here, I've got a wealth of different formats I can actually use. Again, you can see them on the pull down. So all different formats you can actually use to bring the raster data in here, but I'm going to use the format ASC. If you need to convert any data such as the text files, etc., you could do this in software like Civil 3D, or you could do it in software like a Global Mapper. So I'm going to simply browse to my location model. I've got my terrain data and I've got my ASC file, and I'm going to hit open. So that's going to build the model data source in the background. Again, it's going to add information into the SQLite tables, and we're going to give that a bit of time to populate and just let it run its course. So once it's in, it might only take maybe 30 seconds or so to come in, depends on the data area sizes in here. Typically the data area I have in here is quite a substantial area. It probably covers in the region of 240 square kilometers, so it's quite an extensive region. We don't see it in the screen because we haven't configured the grid system. So I'm going to double click to actually get the actual grid system we're going to use. So the coordinate system, I'm going to use Osney Irish Grid. Now if you wanted to pick up another system, if you're using latitude, longitude, if you're using an American grid system, you would actually go and pick it from the many list of coordinate systems that's available. But again, Ordnance Survey is the main grid system I'm using here. I'm simply going to hit it and hit close and refresh. So the data model will refresh in the background. Again, it's SQLite based. It's very, very fast on the screen. You can see the model actually building up. So this is an extensive area, as you can see. So the model's very bare at the minute. I'd want to get the aerial photography or orthophotography draped over the actual model itself. So how you do that? Again, it's the same area. You go back into data sources. This time we're going to look at raster. I'm going to go back in the model and we're going to look at ortho. So I got some orthophotography in here, and you can see you can bring in various different formats, ECW, GeoTIFF, etc. in here. I got a whole series of tiles. I'm going to select them and simply hit open. Now that's going to connect all this data and actually bring it in. I've got a duplicate in here. I'm going to say exclude this one, and I'm just going to hit OK. Okay, so it's going to append the data sources in here. Again, you don't see it because we haven't configured the grid system. So I'm going to select my grid system in here and I'm going to hit close and refresh. Now, typically this may take about 30 seconds to 1 minute to actually come in. Okay, so now we've got the data coming in the background, as you can see. That took a couple minutes to actually process in there, and the great thing about Infrastructure Modeler is it's so quick. This is quite a huge data set, and I can navigate it through it very easily without losing any of the orthophotography in there. So you can see it's a considerable amount of detail in there. So I want to bring in some lake area in. I'm going to link in some more shape files. So I'm going to go into an Esri shapefile now. I'm actually going to attach it. So we've brought in some raster data now, and this we're going to look at a shapefile. So I'm simply going to go back out and model, look at my shapefile, and I've got some water areas in here. So I've got a particular shapefile that I want to bring in. Again, a key thing that normally people miss out in this is actually assign the coordinate system. If you configure the coordinate system, everything will come in as expected. But I want to classify this as a particular type when it comes in. I don't want to make sure it's a water area because we have a typical thing going against water. So we're going to hit OK, and again let that be processed and actually visible on the screen. So just need to actually define the coordinate system there. So we'll do geolocation, make sure it's on Irish grid, water areas, and we'll close and refresh that again. So this will refresh and bring this information, the water area, into the screen. And again, typically might take about 30 seconds or so. It depends on the amount of data it's going to process. Okay, so that's the data being processed. Sometimes it will indicate that it will take about 6 or 7 minutes, but it won't. This took again about 30-40 seconds to come in. So you can see now we have our lake areas in here, and we actually have an effect on against the lake. So you can see a water theme actually going on there. So it's very easy to navigate through the actual interface and spin and orbit. The next thing I have in here are the roads. So the actual roads is just using the orthophotography information in here. But I actually have the road information I want to bring in. And because of this, I want to make sure that a road network actually gets created. So again, I'm going to go into my shape files. I'm going to simply load up some of the road information. So let's go to roads. We've got roads. And again, same as before, with double click, they actually change the coordinate system, change geolocation to our Irish grid. And this time we're going to classify it as roads. And where it gets this information from is in the table data. So we can actually tell the data when it's coming in, how it's going to be classified. We'll look at the likes of this when it's coming in with buildings, say for building heights or roof heights. So I'm just going to simply hit OK. And I'm going to refresh this again. And you'll see what will actually happen is the road network will build. This comes from the shape file, and it will actually put road data in against this. So let's just pop out and look for some of the A and B class roads which are here. So I've only taken in some of the road data. So you can actually see that the road network is being generated. And this is coming from the live Ordnance Survey data. Again, it's available through many countries. You may have to purchase it. Some of the data may be free on the web that you can actually download and bring out. So again, you can see my road network actually physically being created and populated in the background there. Okay, the next thing we can look at is some house information. So we want to have a look at some houses. So let's populate this from a shape file. So let's go to shape. Again, let's have a look at our property information. So I'm going to go into shape, I'm going to look at buildings. So we've got all different classification of buildings in here, and I'm going to look at normal dwellings or houses. And it depends on the Ordnance Survey data that you're actually using. You could use some shape information that actually has a classification for the height of the house. In this case, I don't actually have it, so we're just going to say, look, geolocation. We're going to make sure it's Irish grid. We're going to classify it as a building. If we did want to put a common height in here, we would do it in here. We could add that in as a table if there was a feature code we actually knew to read it off from. In this case I don't, so I'm going to have to put a generic height as 10 in. If we knew information like roof slopes, again we could put this information in. I don't in this case, so I'm just going to hit OK and I'm going to refresh this. And what actually happened is it'll take those shape files and actually assign a 10 meter height to the building. So let's just zoom in against that. So you can see my buildings start to get populated. Again, if we had useful feature codes in here, we could extrapolate this data a wee bit further. We can interrogate, again you'll see the road network in here, we can grab any individual building, actually grip edit, and just change or tweak the individual height. So we can change this information very easily. So again, we can pick up individual buildings in here, or we can simply right click and go to the property information about the building and tweak it and change it accordingly. So you see we've got a wealth of different information in here, like a roof slope. So I could go in here and say, look, add in a roof slope of 30 degrees. We could update that, and we've got a slight roof pitch in there, as you can see, of 30 degrees. I could add a material in against the roof. So again, we could select the properties and we could scroll down here and look for a roof material. So again, we could go into materials library and I could say roofing, and I could say we'll make this say a Spanish tile. Again, if we go update, that information will come across. It's much easier if you have a coded data set to read off, but in this sample we don't. Have a look at the next video that will take this a wee bit further, and we'll build up in this model. Thanks.